Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Mother Like Murder bonus episode.
Bonus. Bonus.
Yes, it's Thursday. It's Halloween when you guys are listening or when this is released, and it's part 2 of the murder of Elizabeth Short, the Black Dahlia murder today.
So if you haven't listened to part 1, go back, listen to it. It's very important. We said it a bunch in that episode, but I'll just say it here again at the top. Her and who she was as a person in her life is important. So go back, listen to part 1, hear all about who she was, what she brought to this world before diving into part 2 with us today.
Yeah, thank you for saying that. Thank you, because you're right. That needs to be listened to before we get into what we're doing right now. But with that said, we're just going to jump into it today.
Let's do it.
If you're ready for it, I'm ready for it. There's a
I'm as
lot
ready as
that's
you
going to be
can
covered.
be with
Yeah.
The absolute gruesomeness that was this crime. So
Right. And that part is really in part 1. I don't really get into the details.
yeah,
So
I
much
think we
here,
covered
so.
it enough in part 1.
Yes. Yep. I agree with that. So, first, I do want to talk a little bit about the investigation early on. So, we do go back to that gruesome scene, back to finding Elizabeth's body in this horrific and mutilated way. They don't know who this woman is. Nothing was left out for them to be able to identify her. And so, what they ended up doing is the FBI was sent photos by a sound photo machine, which is kind of like what you would think like a fax machine today.
Oh,
They were sent fingerprint photos, and it took them not even an hour to match who this victim was. It was 56 minutes. They were able to name the murder victim Elizabeth Short.
how did they do that? From her,
So
from
that
her?
takes us back,
Okay,
yes,
okay.
to part 1, because one of the reasons they were able to make this connection is because of Elizabeth's underage drinking arrest that happened years before. And they had those prints and photos on file from that arrest. And there was actually, and I say it was one of the reasons, because she actually had applied and worked for a position within either a government office or
Gotcha.
something as well. So they
Mhm.
had her information on file there too.
Gotcha.
So now they know who they have, but they don't know why in the world this happened and by who, which is the unfortunate and infamous part of this conversation. This is why when people think about the Black Dahlia and Elizabeth Short's murder, it gets so much notoriety and popularity, that's one of the hard things about what we do working in the podcasting and true crime field, because there's a significant amount of people that are like crime enthusiasts in every
Right.
way, shape, and form, right?
Mhm.
And this one that is so known, so talked about, so researched, and that comes with the fact that there are no answers. And
Right.
when I feel like when something is left open-ended, unsolved, it makes people question and want to look into things. And then on top of that, the brutality and things
Yes.
that you've never seen
Yeah.
before or rarely see, it sends you on a completely different mind fuck of
Yeah.
how could someone do this.
100%. And that's what I was going to say is we've seen this happen with cases where it just remains unsolved, but that, not that it's any less tragic when someone loses their life, but like you said, the brutality of this one and the fact that I don't really want to say like uniqueness in that it's like in a good way, but it is unique in that like you don't see the mutilation and the gruesomeness and all of the other just intricacies that did show up in the coroner's report. You don't see that quite often, so it does kind of trigger that extra questioning from people of
Yeah.
like you said, what in the fuck.
Yeah. And it just begs you to question, like, what kind of person And why
Yes.
are there people capable of things like this?
Yes.
You know, and it's like it just sends me off on like rants and I need to like reel things back in, right? But it's like
Yeah.
this case got so much coverage and status from the very beginning. And so the theories began. We're an episodic podcast. And so I will be talking in short about multiple theories right now. And I'm positive I will not be covering each and every single one.
It
I
would be
won't be
impossible to.
covering exactly.
Even
Yeah.
in a
And I'm
serial
like,
episode, even in a serial podcast, it would be
right,
impossible because there's infinite
right.
theories.
Exactly. And so like I'm sorry for that, and if that's what you want and that's what you're looking for, there's a million other ways for you guys to go and find what you're looking for and to deep dive into, but in short form episode, I'm going to do my best. First thing that I want to talk about is Elizabeth's father, Cleo Short again. He was contacted immediately after they identified her and found out that he was living only 3 miles from where her body was found. When detectives spoke with him, he said he hadn't seen her in 3 years, and he was apparently still angry about her running around, quote, running around instead
Ugh.
of tending to his domestic needs.
Ugh.
That makes me vomit.
Ugh.
Yeah.
Disgusting.
And so when they actually asked him to come in and identify her body, he refused. He wouldn't even go.
What
Yeah.
a just all around dick. Now,
Yep.
here's my question.
Yes.
He was up. So when she first moved to California,
He was in
it,
Vallejo.
it was in Vallejo, and then she left for
Yeah.
a spin and then came back to California. Where was it again?
I'm not exactly sure.
Okay.
Where
Okay.
are you saying where was she found
Yes.
or where was he living?
Yes, both, I guess.
But as of where he was living, that I don't know. So how do you say that? Leimert Park neighborhood of Los Angeles?
How do you spell it?
Leimert Park neighborhood.
Okay, yeah, that's like LA, like kind of South
So he
LA.
must have moved at some point to be 3 miles away and I'm even when I lived in California and I was there however long I was there, 30 years, I still don't know where shit is in LA comparison.
Yeah. So he's kind of like, so Vallejo is like NorCal. Like Vallejo's like San Francisco area. If I mean, you guys know we're not geography experts here, but I'm almost positive Vallejo is like up by San Francisco. Where she was found is basically like LA, Crenshaw, like Inglewood,
Right.
Crenshaw, right in there.
Right.
So he, in the time that she had left and returned to California, he had also moved down to Southern California.
That's what makes sense.
Interesting. Okay.
Interesting.
We always say there's no coincidences.
No coincidences, but it didn't really lead to much more than that, other than he was someone who just seemed like not the best person, you know, like that he really just not only did a bunch of shitty things and abandoned them and then came back and then kicked her out and stuff like that, but he wouldn't even go and identify. And it's like, I think about that. That would be like the hardest thing ever, but how do you not do that? Like,
yeah, like I mean, like he writes a letter to a quote unquote apologize,
Yeah.
but y'all go back to part 1 and to hear my thoughts on his shitty ass apology.
Right.
But like, I feel like as hard as it is, if someone is asking you to come identify a body, you kind of, you as a human being, knowing too that, you know, it's not like there's a bunch of people in the area, you know, she hasn't lived there for 50 years and they couldn't just ask like the local, like, I don't know, postal worker to come in and be like, yeah, that's her. I deliver mail to her every day for the last 50 years. You know, she's new to not new, but like she's a nomadic person, so you don't know how many people in the area would be able to identify her. So when you find someone who would be able to identify her, I feel like you kind of owe that to like, just
Your daughter?
yeah, your daughter and any human in general. Like, how messed up would it be to have someone laying there and someone not come in and at the very least just say, yes, that is who you think it is.
Yeah.
So that, like, you can just, as a human being, like, people have that closure. So yeah, it's fucked up.
It is. It really is.
Sorry, Terry.
All of this is. All of this is.
Yeah.
So next, one of the big things to happen in the investigation was, so she was found on January 15th. On January 24th, a suspicious manila envelope was discovered. Okay. It was addressed to the Los Angeles Examiner and other Los Angeles papers. And individual words had been cut out from newspaper articles to piece words together on, it was cut and pasted
Typical
onto.
creepy psychopath vibe.
Correct.
Yeah.
Yes. So a large message on the face of the envelope read, "Here is Dahlia's belongings. Letter to follow." In this manila envelope, they found Elizabeth Short's birth certificate, different business cards, and it wasn't like her business cards. It was just business cards in the envelope, photographs, names on pieces of paper, and an address book with the name Mark Hansen on the cover of it. All of these items were not able to be traced because they were all wiped down with gasoline, making it impossible to, pull fingerprints or find who sent them. This time was hard, and so many people, right? And how horrible is this next sentence, Heather? Because so many people tried to take credit for Elizabeth's murder.
Disgusting.
Take credit. They commit to a crime they did not do. And I say this because so many people claimed that it was them.
Ugh.
I say lock them all up. If they want it so bad,
I mean,
just literally
it is
arrest
a crime.
them all.
It's a crime. You're sitting there, you're lying, you're perjuring yourself, and you're impeding on an investigation. So,
right. Yeah, I agree. I mean, that's my answer. Lock them up, arrest them, take them in, lock them up. Not that there's any room for anybody else, but lock them up. Okay, let's talk about this little pocketbook, Mark Hansen. He was quickly a suspect. His name was on the front of the pocketbook that was sent to authorities. Hansen was a local nightclub and theater owner, and he was pretty well off. From other people's accounts, so interviews with locals during the investigation, they could see that it could have been Hansen. He was friendly with Elizabeth. They knew each other, and people said that he would make advances at her, which she would reject, which could definitely be the motive. Also, a shoe and a purse were discovered, I want to say the next day after the manila folder, but it might have been the same day, which Hansen was able to confirm was indeed Elizabeth's shoe and purse. And so there were just certain things pointing to him as a possibility. But with that said, and like many others, he was cleared of suspicion pretty quickly. They look into Robert Manley, which was the last known person to have been confirmed with Elizabeth that day. I talked about him in the last episode. He's the one who took her to the Biltmore Hotel in downtown Los Angeles after they were out of town for 2 weeks together. And so, of course, they look into him. He ended up taking numerous polygraph tests and passing all of them, and then he was cleared. Which back then, I mean, I feel like polygraph tests were probably like thought of to be like,
it was like the
thing.
DNA of the day. Yeah, it was infallible type of situation. Right. And I mean, granted, at this point, it's 1947, right? It's pre-DNA, pre a lot of pretty basic forensic, established forensic methodology. They have fingerprints, and they have your basic gumshoe investigation techniques, and they have polygraphs. So I think it's not like they have a whole heck of a lot else at their disposal technology wise.
Yeah, and his thing was he just dropped her off and he left, and I guess people could kind of like confirm that he went back home, and I mean, he went back home because guess what? He was a married man, and they were able to confirm that he was back home. So back to this. So many people were brought in to help on this investigation. I want to say there was 750 people plus that were in on this.
Yeah.
Law enforcement and detectives and all of that. They went through this pocketbook. They contacted names throughout it, and they followed up on leads. Here's one of the things that I always questioned whenever I heard this, and even looking into this myself, is like this pocketbook had Mark Hansen's name embroidered on the front of it.
Right.
So why were you guys using it as like it was hers?
Yeah.
Like, because that is one of the things is like they were calling these people, and maybe it was just because of it was there and they needed connections. Maybe they were looking, I'm sure they were looking at it as well as like a let's talk to people Mark knows, because then maybe we can see if he had anything to do with it. But then also they were treating it as like potential people that she was seeing, which I'll get into in a
Yeah,
little
but,
bit.
like, it makes you wonder, like, when they went and talked to Mark Hansen, how did he explain the fact like, maybe he said, "Oh, I gave that to her, 3 months ago because hers broke, so I gave her my nice embroidered one. Here, I have my new one right here," type of situation. But it's
Yeah.
like, is that what happened and why they decided to like, okay, that's a reasonable enough explanation. We're gonna now treat this as if she's been the one using this pocketbook for the last like 3 years or 3 months or something. I don't know.
Right.
So it's just like, but like, what? Yeah, like it's
Like,
kind of
why did she
weird.
have it? And
Yeah,
it is one of those things where they did have a friendship, they did
right.
know each other, like, and she would stay there sometimes, and so it wasn't ever like, "No, I don't know that girl," type
Right.
thing. So maybe he did give it to her. I don't know, but let's go
Mm.
back. So 2 days after that manila envelope arrived, on January 26th, a letter was received by the examiner again, and this one was handwritten and said, quote, this one's kind of weird, the wording, so this how I say it is exactly how it came.
Mhm.
Here it is, turning in Wednesday, January 29th, 10 a.m. Had my fun at police, Black Dahlia Avenger, end quote. So the letter also named a location at which the supposed killer would turn himself in. Police waited at the location on the morning of the 29th, but this alleged killer did not appear. Instead, at 1 p.m., at the same office, they received another cut and pasted letter which read, "Have changed my mind. You would not give me a square deal. Dahlia killing was justified."
Psychopath.
See, and that's crazy to me because so when I first hear about so they received the manila envelope with the cut and paste.
Mhm.
When I first heard about the other one being handwritten, my first thought was definitely not
Same
connected.
person.
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
definitely someone else who's inserting themselves into this. But
Mhm.
then for the next one to be a cut and paste as well, that
Right.
definitely goes with the one that they
Right.
received. This person's all over the place.
Right. Or it's more
That
than
is
one
so
person
weird.
working together.
Or that. Or that, Heather. Yeah, I hate it all. I hate it all. So, as they continued with looking into everything, another direction that they went is they started looking into if Elizabeth was a lesbian. And
Okay.
this came from a few things that ended up not being able to be confirmed. But the first is that in one of the statements from a reporter was that she wasn't having sex with men. And he was able to say this because apparently he said she had small genitalia. Is that how you say that? Genitalia.
Yeah.
Why does it sound so weird?
She
In the
had small male genitalia?
That's why his report is weird. And so he references and says that in the coroner's report, it does say that her uterus was small. None of this is adding up, okay? But but this comment on top of the fact that Hansen was refused sex by Elizabeth made people begin to question or speculate that she could be a lesbian. And that is where I just need to say right here, You can refuse to have sex with anyone that you do not want to have sex with, and that doesn't exactly mean you're a lesbian. Heather's face
I
right now.
I uh I still have to remind myself, even though it's not okay, it never was okay, it never will be okay, but we're talking about 1947 here. It still happens to this day that a woman says no to a male advance and she's automatically labeled gay or lesbian or whatever. Happens to this day. But what I don't understand is, was that a theory if you have small genitalia? Does this include boobs? Like, you have small boobs, you're a lesbian? Like, I
Yeah.
don't, what is this? I hate, okay, you know, that could send me off on a whole thing.
Yeah.
But wow.
It's
Okay.
like, it's one of those things where, like, even reading it, I was like, do I even want to get into this? Do I even want to talk about this right now? But I do. It needs to be talked about because
I
of
think
this
it needs
next
to be
part as
talked
well.
about. Well, that and the idea that, like, we have to remember this whole idea that, and nowadays it's, oh, she was taking prescription pills for depression, she ran away, she committed suicide.
Yeah.
From the get-go, during investigations, there's always some kind of preconceived notions. You can see it from 1947 all the way up to current present day,
Right.
where these investigators get on these random fucking ideas that are based in zero truth. And it's just ridiculous how that still happens. But okay, I'm off my soapbox.
No, it's okay. I'm
now.
about to get on your soapbox in a
Great.
moment as well. And
Let
so,
me scooch over.
yeah, let me
Make
just,
some room
let's
for
stand there
you.
together. Let's box together. Okay. Then there is the complete opposite that was talked about over and over and over as well. And
I'm
that
sure,
was that
yeah.
she was this femme fatale and that she had all
Mhm.
of these men in this pocketbook, and they were men that she would meet up with and date and have relationships with. And so many people in this address book were looked into and questioned and cleared. And even if she had a fucking long list of people that she went and met up with every single day, that doesn't condone a single damn thing, okay?
Exactly.
And so with these last two things, you do have to look into every directions, every part of life, every possibility, all of the things when you're trying to find answers and find the person responsible. But I guess once certain narratives were created, they
Yeah.
paint these inaccurate descriptions that have no importance when it comes to finding the
Exactly.
murderer.
Exactly.
So,
100%. Exactly. Well said.
oh, thank you. Step down from the box together, hand in hand. All right. Next person we need to talk about. So now I'm going to actually start naming more people. I know I named Mark Hansen. They look into a bunch of other people that are lead to nothing. So Orson Welles. He was a director, actor, writer, producer, filmmaker, all of the things. So apparently not long before Elizabeth was murdered, she had wrote a letter home saying she was going to have an audition for a movie. Nowhere did it say for what movie or with what director or filmmaker, but this and then there was a restaurant they would both frequent. Made it possible that they could run into each other. Okay? One of the people that apparently knew Elizabeth wrote a book about Orson Welles being the possible murderer. And one of the things that definitely did not help is that not long after the murder, Orson Welles made a movie, directed a movie called The Lady from Shanghai. And in this movie, he had a scene where it was a carnival setup. And there were many, many, many things in this scene that were similar or could be referenced to how Elizabeth was found when it came to body parts, the Glasgow smile, and the body cut in half. This scene didn't even make the film, but coincidence, I don't know. And so this girl straight up says, like, it was him, 100%. Nothing ever came from it. And there's not a single other thing. There was no actual connection and them two knowing each other and having anything whatsoever.
Yeah.
So just one of the other
I
ones
know,
that came out of nowhere.
I know some people think okay, we're talking LA, Hollywood in the 40s. I mean, there's not a lot of it's busy, but it's not like yes, people are going to run into each other. Like especially if you're in the industry, it may seem like it's a big industry, but it's small enough that, in LA people are going to run into each other, especially in the 40s. And what this is making me think of is I think it was last Halloween. Wow, this is coming full circle. When we went, was it last Halloween that we did the episode on all the cursed movies?
I think so.
And it was like they were talking about like sometimes people would like the one where I think it was for The Omen, maybe, where there was like this horrific death, and then all of these pieces of the movie kept kind of
Yeah.
coming
Yeah.
back towards like that horrific death. And so, I mean, I know we say coincidences don't happen, but I don't
They
know.
do.
I don't know.
They do unless I say they don't.
Yeah.
Just kidding. Okay, we got to talk about another person and a few more people. This was another one that was big when it came to like possibilities. His name is George Nolton. He was a suspect for a moment. His daughter actually claimed that she saw him murder Elizabeth in a repressed memory. She wrote a book that was published called Daddy Was the Black Dahlia Killer. Her claim is that Elizabeth was staying in their basement. George had gotten her pregnant and that she had a miscarriage. After this happened, in a fit of rage, he murdered her. Then she says that she had to go with him to dispose of her body. The police, so she wrote this book. She's always like stuck to her statement and her story. The police said that they took her serious enough that they went and they dug up the grounds to her home from back then. So they dug this home up in 1991 and they found nothing. So I want to say,
Yeah.
like, I'm so thankful that they took that time to go and do that. How many times do we see cases that have all this damning evidence and they don't do a damn thing to do a dig?
Right.
So it's like, I'm so grateful that they did this. But nothing came from it. George Nolton, he ended up passing. So did the daughter Janice. She ended up passing as well. She actually took her own life from pills and drinking. But I don't know about this one too, because and I'm not saying that things can't happen in a certain way, but if he was to murder her in a fit of rage, I don't see it being as clean and as precise and as, in my opinion, thought out as
Yeah.
hers was.
The autopsy report clearly shows that whoever did this spent a considerable amount of time with the body. And like you said, that time was meticulous. Like there
Right.
was a lot done. Yeah, I don't and repressed memories, while I do believe they are a thing, they were much more of a thing back then. And I do believe that it was, there was an abuse of the idea of repressed memory. So that one's hard for me to
Yeah.
get on board with.
Yep. I feel like everyone's on board with the same person. So it's also just hard to get on board with anything else. But that's just me. I don't know. That's just my thought. And who am I to say whatever I want to say? All right. There's an entire theory of law enforcement being involved. And that's why it didn't get solved. Also, along with this theory, part of it is that Mark Hansen, who we talked about at the beginning, did play a role in Elizabeth's murder, and he was able to pay off and buy out the law enforcement, and that's why he got away with it, and law enforcement got away with it, and all of them got away with it. And I truly hate not knowing, because that is
Yeah.
another one that I do feel like if there's other possibilities, that's one that really does make a lot of sense to me.
Sure.
As much as I don't believe it, that is the one that I'm like, should I weigh a little bit? And because you just unfortunately see that kind of stuff happen way too often. So
the plausibility and possibility of that is a lot higher just based on what we know about other cases, for sure.
right. Okay. Connections to other murders. Could Elizabeth's death be tied to a serial killer? And there are a few out there that are talked about in possible connections, but I won't be getting into them in detail. I did want to mention some of them, which I was telling Heather earlier. I feel horrible because so many people lost their lives to these horrific killers, and I don't want to seem like I'm brushing over them whatsoever. You guys can go and read and find episodes that cover these victims in the ways that they deserve, but I'm trying to stick directly with Elizabeth Short's murder, and these were never more than just theories or things that were talked about. So there's that, okay? But my heart does feel for every single one of them, and I freaking hate it so much. So the Cleveland Torso murders, which happened between 1934 and 1938. These were looked into in the connection, the possibility, but later they were discounted. Nothing came from it. Just even hearing that name and knowing what happened to her, I would instantly be like, yep, there it is.
Yeah.
But no, like that, there was nothing that actually came from that. That person got arrested, convicted, and there's that. The lipstick murders. This was a convicted serial killer. Again, he got caught. They looked into him because of the similarities in the murder itself. But one of the things that actually made it questionable, even more so, was that there was also handwriting on the ransom note that ended up like being spot on matching with something from this man. And so they were trying to like see if there was anything else. Nothing ever ended up coming out, and that was that. The last one I'm going to mention is the Lone Woman murders, which happened between 1943 and 1949, which was over a dozen murders in the Los Angeles area and surrounding areas, and these included sexual mutilation of young women. None of these murders were solved. None of them. And I mean over a dozen. So that leads me to the last person that we are going to be talking about, who has been the main prime suspect the majority of the time, and this is George Hodel. A little background on him. George Hodel Jr. was an American physician. And I know that we've said it over and over and over that it's truly believed that anyone who had the ability to do what was done to Elizabeth had to have some sort of medical background.
Yeah.
There was just no way to have the precision, the skill that this person had, cleaning of the body, draining blood of the body, cutting of the body, mutilation. Like, I don't even want to keep saying it, but there was no way that this person did not have previous knowledge.
Exactly. Yeah.
Or 20 murders under his belt that he got this.
Yeah.
I don't know. 2 of his children believe he's guilty of it. He was also accused of raping his daughter, Tamar Hodel, but was acquitted of that crime. He was someone who left and lived overseas to get away in between, different years throughout, and then came back. But yeah, so George's very own son, Steve Hodel, is a veteran of the LAPD. He's one of the main people supporting and talking about his dad being the one who killed Elizabeth Short. After George died, Steve found a box in his home. 2 pictures in the box looked like Elizabeth Short. I don't think that they were ever 100% confirmed to be anyone, but it was believed to be her. George was a doctor and can definitely be able to, do what was done. Now I'm just naming a couple things that go with it, but he had a lot of work done to his home after the fact. And so it's like, what was he? A lot of people remodel their homes. Okay. I'm not trying to
Sure.
say that people don't remodel their homes, but is there a reason that maybe these things were done? Many law enforcement state that the prime suspect at the time lived on Franklin Avenue, the home that Steve lived on growing up with his father, George. 2006, Steve wrote a book called Black Dahlia Avenger. After this book came out, it struck a lot of new investigation. And one of the things that came from Detective Lopez, he got out of this from the DA's office, that so he went and got whatever information they had there, right? And in
Sure.
the information, George was in fact one of the 6 main suspects back in the day. They ended up bugging his house. And they had audio of him talking and saying that he put a pillow over someone's head and killed her, and she expired at 12:59. Then he said, and I quote, "Supposing I did kill the Black Dahlia. They can't prove it now. They can't talk to my secretary anymore because she's dead. They thought there was something fishy. Anyway, now they may have figured it out. Killed her. Maybe I did kill my secretary." End quote. Lopez gave the information to Steve, who took it back to the Los Angeles DA's office, and then someone wrote Steve a letter. In the letter, it said, "The name of George Hodel will live in infamy, and that if George was still alive, he would file to murder charges, 2 charges against him." I don't know, because part of me wants to just be like, okay, it's closed. We're done here.
Yeah.
And I'm sure so
Yeah.
many people feel or think the exact same way.
Yeah.
I mean, 2 of his children thought it. They found, I want to say, evidence of something.
Oh, yeah. For
Evidence
sure.
of a lot of things.
Yeah.
And yet we still have Elizabeth Short's murder as unsolved. And that makes me really sad. But
Yeah.
that's
It's so
really
hard.
all I have.
Oh,
I know.
it's so hard
I'm
because,
sorry.
like, you know, we've seen cases get solved 40 years later
Yeah, we have.
without DNA, and it just, I feel like it's one of those cases that truly may never see a final answer, that is just going to continue to be one of those cases. But it just sucks because I feel that there was probably things that could have been done back in the day differently. Well, probably, definitely things that could have been done back in the day differently that would have preserved enough evidence and or something in order to come to an answer however many years later. And I just think that, like, if they believed that the dude, like, they had his house tapped,
Right.
where's the follow through on that, like, what
And
the fuck?
and I find it really crazy too, because from what the statements, things that I read on the fact that it's like as if he was never named publicly, which I know that everyone does things how they do things and there's reasons behind all of it, whatever.
Right.
But the fact that he wasn't named there, and then when this son, Steve Hodel, starts he finds his box, he's looking at this, he's like, holy shit, dude, this is crazy. And then he brings it up, and then he finds out that oh wow, my
He was
dad's
a
name was
suspect.
actually in the prime suspect, in that list of 6 people.
Right.
So there's that connection. And then on top of that, he finds out that they bugged the house that he lived at on Franklin,
Right.
being named, oh, one of our prime suspect lives on Franklin. Oh, you know who lived on Franklin? Me with my dad.
Yeah.
That's nuts.
Yeah. Yeah. It just feels like there's so much there. Like, they just needed one more piece.
Right.
Like, one more piece. And it's like, I guess what frustrates me about it is, like, you guys went off on all these, like, ideas, which, like you said before, every avenue should be explored. Everything, every tool in your investigative belt should be used. But it's like, she didn't like having sex with men. Let's go down the, like, are you fucking for real? Like, you have a dude who you tapped his house. You have him talking about killing people. What the fuck are you doing spending time worrying about whether or not she was a lesbian or whatever? Sorry, I know I'm yelling. We're going to have to edit that down.
Yell, girl. No, I'm going to turn it up.
It's just like that kind of thing. It's just so frustrating to me. And it's like the same thing, because I remember getting so worked up too, like with Jean. To me, it's a really, it feels like a Jean Benet, where it's like, there's all these pieces. You have all these pieces.
Who did it?
This should be finished. Done. Case solved.
Right.
Why?
Okay. I know. It's I don't know. It's just so crazy to me that, and you bring up that case, and there are so many others, and I think that kind of like makes me circle back to the beginning when I was talking about how, when it comes to people who, the listeners right now, whether you're someone who just really likes to listen to true crime, maybe you're listening to this just because you're trying to get information for your own episode or article or something that you're doing, who knows? But it's like, there's so many people who look into these cases and listen to these podcasts or watch these documentaries because of that. And a lot of people don't like to listen to unsolved things. So I'm not trying to say like that, but the people who do, I feel like they have that thing that I know that you and I both have, where it's like, what in the world can I do? How is there no way within among the masses of people that this has not been solved in this case, in the other case, in the next case, in the last case, And it's like, that is what keeps me coming back, and that's what keeps me looking into things, and that's what keeps me going when it comes to like, no, none of these should ever be left without answers. Yeah. And I don't know how I'm going to do it, but I got to find answers to everything.
Well, and
I don't know how, man.
It makes me think of, what it makes me think of is when you were saying like people listening and us being that thing where it's like, we need the answers. It makes me think of Michelle McNamara, who, I don't know, the OG listeners will remember, I talked about her literally like way back when on like episode 10, where she literally started with a true crime blog, was one of the OG web sleuth investigators.
Yep.
She coined the term Golden State Killer. And she had been able to put together and piece together so many things. And granted, she did eventually get access to some people and things that normally a civilian wouldn't be granted access to. But because she was so professional and because she was so smart, she was granted some insider knowledge. But it's like, that's what, I just think of her, of like, RIP, because like, I feel like people like her are who we need to be able to be like, I've got it. This is my next, and she was able to, I mean, I truly believe that without Michelle McNamara, they would not have been able to find the Golden State Killer. I truly believe that. Now, I know there's a lot of other people who worked on that case. Are the one and only Paul Holes, who I definitely fangirled over when we were at Crime Con.
You were like, oh, it's his voice.
I know. But it's definitely one of those things where you sit there and you go like, the answer's there. We need to put it together.
Yeah. And just the one missing piece. And you just keep sharing it. You just keep talking about it. You just keep putting things out there until someone has that one final piece to put into the
Yeah.
puzzle, and then it's all there.
Yeah, because Elizabeth Short, she deserves, like, first of all, we've talked about it. She deserves to be known as Elizabeth Short. She
Right.
doesn't need to be known as like the Black Dahlia murder. She deserves to be known as Elizabeth Short. And her story deserves to have like justice for her and what was done to her and her family. I mean, she has 4 sisters and a mother, who it sucks, like,
Right.
knowing that was the case. And so, yeah, she deserves that closure just like anybody. And I vow now to always remember, because obviously anyone who's into true crime has known the quote unquote Black Dahlia murder. And, and I had been talking to Rachel about how I'm excited to sit on this side and hear everything, because I've heard all the details about it before years ago when I first looked into the case, when I first heard about the case. But over the years, those details kind of fall off. And so it's important to remember who she was as a person. So again, just thank you, Rachel, for doing that in part 1 and making sure, people knew her and who she was, Elizabeth Short. Not just, oh, the Black Dahlia murder, brutal murder, here's all the people that people think did it and that kind of thing. So good job.
Thank you. Yeah, I feel like that's a point that we both need to try to always make, and I think we do a good job at that. So I'm thankful that we do that. You know what I'm saying? But that's it. There's so many more things that could be said.
Oh,
There's
yeah.
so many more things that could be talked about. If there's something that you're like, how in the world did you not talk about this?
Let us
Bring it
know.
to me. And
Yeah.
there's other things I did see that I didn't put in here. But tell me what your thoughts are. Send me anything you know, because guess what? Maybe the more you send me, the more we can work together to figure it out. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So let's
Yeah.
make that happen.
I love it.
All right, but that is it. Happy Halloween, you guys.
Happy Halloween.
And we're moving. We're moving through the year pretty quickly.
Damn.
Heather, I'm just gonna let them know we're gonna be taking a little 2-week break, guys. So Heather and I are taking our first 2-week break. We won't leave you guys without something. You will absolutely have something to listen to.
Something to listen to.
But we are taking a 2-week break. We'll still be working. We've got things that we need to do and things that are going to be happening, but you won't hear
Very
from
exciting
us.
things.
You won't hear from us for 2 weeks. We're going to make you miss us, all right? All right, we will talk to you guys. We'll be here next Tuesday, so that was just a little heads up for a future time to come, breaky break. But we will talk to you next Tuesday. Heather, I hope you have a freaking fabulous day.
Aw, thank you. I hope you do too.
Thank you. I am. And it's starting for the weekend for us. We're about to get into it. And so I gotta go live that life,
Live that life.
Yeah. All right, you guys. Talk to you next week. Okay, love you. Bye.
Okay, love you. Bye.